My panel joins me now, Kayleigh McEnany, RNC spokeswoman, Brian Wesbury, the First Trust Portfolio's chief economist, and Isaac Wright is back with us as well. Kayleigh, great seeing you. President Trump seems optimistic, saying 47-48. We know Rand Paul is out, so that puts Murkowski, McCain, Collins, perhaps Lee and Cruz into play. Give us the latest.
Yeah, good to see you too, Charles. We are very confident about Graham Cassidy. This is an effort to repeal and replace Obamacare. We're seeing a lot of positive movement from these senators. We're convinced that we'll get at least 50 votes, perhaps even 51. And this will do so much good for the American people. They have been suffering under the burden of Obamacare. You have 2.6 million people next year who are not going to have but one insurance company in their Obamacare exchange. This is the relief the American people need.
Speaking of that, then, let me ask you, Brian, we know the economic damage from Obamacare, particularly to small businesses. Right. Would this bill give the kind of relief we need to sort of further unleash our economy?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Charles, there are some tax cuts in the bill, and by pushing kind of block grants to states and cutting the funding to states, making states pay for the promises they made rather than the rest of the country. That's why Nancy Pelosi is complaining about New York and California. What they did is that they opened up Medicaid to everybody. They added health care things that were covered by insurance, and that cost a lot more, and they're counting on the rest of the country to pay for it. So what happens is this says, hey, if you want to do that in New York and California, you pay for it, and that will help the other 48 states. And so I do believe that this bill, it's better than moving to a single payer. It's better than bailing out the insurance companies, but it's still not a perfect reform. Nonetheless, it will help the economy, Charles.
Isaac, the fact of the matter is that Obamacare, as envisioned by President Obama, is a failure, and it's been Medicaid that sort of has taken up the slack. But that is an extraordinarily expensive program. And let me just finish my question, Isaac. So the question is, states always gripe about not being able to control their own destiny. What is wrong with these giant block grants to these states so they can control costs and control how the money is distributed?
Okay, so let's answer that in two parts because there were kind of two questions there. One was your comment about the failure of Obamacare, which is the fact that we have less Americans uninsured than ever in our history before. More Americans today have access to life-saving and life-altering health care than they've ever had before. That's not a failure. Secondly,
but also don't forget that the costs are rising massively.
Can I answer Charles's question before I take
money.
yours? Let me
just Isaac, answer my second question because I want to get back to Kayleigh. Go ahead, Isaac.
Block grants. I'd like to get to the second part of the original question about block grants. The problem is that the ACA, as you call it, Obamacare, put limits on health insurance companies that they could not deny things like pre-existing conditions. They could not say that pregnancy by a woman was an uncovered condition. They could not say that old people, because they're sicker or need more health care, have to automatically be put into a pool for higher rates than other people.
Isaac, you're not answering the question. You're just giving me the talking points.
Yes,
let me just real quick.
I just answered your question. You asked me what the problems were. I named three of them.
Kayleigh, here's the thing, though. You do have an issue with Republican governors. Particularly Kasich and others, and perhaps, and that is making this a nail-biter.
Yeah, look, the Republican governors, Republican senators, and congressmen need to get behind their Republican president who is advocating for this. I just want to quickly dispel a myth that Isaac just said. This does not change pre-existing conditions. You still cannot deny someone coverage. It demands that the states come up with plans. And I just want to say to you, Isaac, I sat across from a mother who told me about how she had to empty out her 401k to afford her premium, a father who picked up a second job as a bus driver whose son was denied medicine. You're ignoring the plight of Obamacare victims all across this country, and you're doing a disservice to your own cause.
We're out of time, guys, but listen, we know premiums went through the roof. We know deductibles went through the roof.
A week who only can afford
and almost everyone lost their doctors.